Hey everyone, and welcome to America Current Affairs. Today we're taking you to the beautiful but sometimes treacherous mountains of Himachal Pradesh in India. We're going to talk about a heartbreaking story, a bus packed with families on their way to a festival, a journey that was supposed to be all about celebration, but instead it ended in a terrifying 500-foot plunge. And what you're going to see is that this one single tragedy, well, it points to a much, much bigger problem.
Okay, I want to start with just one number, 75. Now, picture this in your head. You've got a bus, right? It's designed to carry, let's say, 39 people. That's the max. So what do you think happens when you cram 75 people onto it? We're talking almost double the limit. And not just anywhere, but on a winding, narrow mountain road. Just think about that for a second.
Well, this is what happens. This is the tragic result. What you're looking at here are the rescue operations after that very bus, that overloaded bus, went tumbling into a deep gorge. So today we're going to break it all down for you. We'll look at what happened, try to understand why it happened, and maybe most importantly, what this one awful crash tells us about a huge problem that goes way beyond this single road.
All right, so to really get this, let's start with the people on board. Because you see, this wasn't just some random bus trip. No, for so many of these passengers, this was supposed to be the beginning of a huge celebration. So this bus, it was packed with families, with friends, all heading home for something called Boda Tayar. And this isn't just any festival. For the haughty people in that region, this is the biggest, most important celebration of the entire year. So you can just imagine the vibe on that bus. It wasn't just about getting from point A to point B, it was pure excitement, looking forward to seeing family, celebrating all that good stuff.
So the day starts out totally normal. In the morning, the bus pulls out of a city called Shimla. Its destination? A little village named Kukvi. Everything seems fine. But then, in the afternoon, as it's making its way along one of those tricky mountain roads, everything changes in an instant. Something goes terribly, terribly wrong. The driver loses control, and the bus just goes right over the edge. It just plunges, tumbling down into the gorge.
Okay, so what happened in the moments right after the crash? It was just absolute chaos. Let's really paint a picture of what that scene was like at the bottom of that gorge.
500 feet. That's how far the bus fell. Now, it's kind of hard to picture that, right? So think of it this way. It's like falling from the top of a 50-story skyscraper, a 50-story building. The force of that impact, you can only imagine. It would have been absolutely catastrophic.
For people who were nearby, the first thing they knew was the sound. The Tribune newspaper put it this way. They said, "Panic gripped the area as cries for help echoed from the gorge." Can you imagine hearing that? Just the sound of people needing help coming from that far down, it must have been terrifying.
And here's something that's just incredible. The very first people on the scene. They weren't paramedics, they weren't police with sirens, nope. It was the local villagers. People who lived nearby heard the crash, heard those cries, and they just ran to the edge of the gorge, and then they started that incredibly dangerous climb down to try and pull people from the wreckage. I mean, wow. They were literally the first lifeline for those survivors. Okay, so a tragedy like this, it doesn't just happen out of the blue, right? There's always a reason, a cause. So let's dig into what the investigators are looking at right now.
And really, it all boils down to this one question that absolutely everyone is asking. From the heartbroken families to the government officials, why? How on earth did this happen?
And remember that number we started with? This right here is probably the single biggest clue. The bus had a legal capacity of just 39 people. 39. But on that day, there were 75 people packed inside. That is almost double what it was built to handle. It's just a staggering difference. So investigators are looking at a few major things that likely combined to create this disaster. Number one, obviously, is that severe overloading. A bus that heavy would be incredibly hard to control. Number two, people in the area said there was frost, maybe even some ice on the road, which would make it super slippery. And then there's number three, the simple possibility of human error, a driver losing control on a really sharp, really tough turn. You put all that together, and it's a recipe for tragedy. And because of all these potential factors, the government has, as you'd expect, ordered an official investigation. They need to get to the bottom of this, find out the exact chain of events, and get some real answers.
But now we need to zoom out a bit, because what's really important to understand here is that this crash, as horrible as it is, it's not just a one-off thing. It's actually a symptom of a much bigger and honestly a much scarier trend happening on India's roads.
Just take a look at this graph. It shows something called the accident severity rate in India. Now that sounds complicated, but it's not. Basically, while the number of accidents might bounce around year to year, this line shows that the deadliness of those accidents has been going up and up and up for years.
So what exactly does severity rate mean? It's actually pretty simple. It's the number of people who are killed for every 100 accidents. So back in 2005, for every 100 crashes, about 22 people died. Fast forward to 2022, and that number jumped to more than 36. Let that sink in. It means that when a crash happens in India today, it's way more likely to be deadly than it was just a couple decades ago.
And let's bring this right back to Himachal Pradesh, the state where this crash happened. Get this, the authorities themselves have identified almost 1,650 vulnerable spots on their roads. These are places they know are dangerous. And while this chart shows they fixed a lot of them, look at that last column. There are still over 536 to be exact, of these known danger zones that are just still waiting to be fixed.
So, after a terrible event like this, the big question is, what happens now? What are the next steps, and what should we all take away from this?
Well, there are a few things happening right away. First, that official investigation is going to continue, hopefully to hold someone accountable. Second, the government has promised to give financial aid to help the families of the 14 people who died and also the many who were injured. But really, the third step here is the most important one, and that's putting a huge new spotlight on this national road safety crisis that we've been talking about.
And all of this really leaves us with one last, really big question. When you have a bus that's dangerously overloaded, driving on a road that authorities know is a danger spot, and it's all happening against a backdrop of accidents becoming deadlier and deadlier, it just makes you wonder, how many more tragedies like this, how many more warnings do we need to see before something fundamentally changes?
Thanks so much for joining me to break this down. If you want to get a deeper understanding of the stories that are shaping our world, make sure you follow us here at America Current Affairs.